Good morning, good afternoon, everyone who is joining us today. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on time. We are so excited to have you all here. We are gonna give everyone just a minute to, join, get settled before we jump in. In the meantime, while we are waiting for other attendees to join, we'd love to hear from you. We appreciate engagement, and I'm curious, is this the first time you are joining speed learning session hosted by Giveffect, or you've been here before? Let us know if this is the first time or you joined any other sessions previously. First time, welcome, Patty. Anybody else? First time.
Right, first time.
I love that. All right, Jason joined before. Welcome back. Thank you for being here with us again. First time, first time. Amazing. Oh, we have so many people joining first time. Awesome. Well, for those who are here first time, we choose a topic every month and we have a new topic again every month of the year. And this, of course, month we are going to be talking all about capital campaign. And for all of you, this is speed learning sessions. They go so fast. We're gonna jump right in. All right. Well, once again, welcome everyone to our speed learning session this month, Capital Campaign 101, what every nonprofit needs to know before your launch. My name is Yulia Zhernovaya. I'm head of growth and strategy at Giveffect. Giveffect is a software platform built and designed specifically for nonprofits and those who are tired of having multiple siloed systems, multiple logins, data all over the place, and they're looking for efficiency, better results with less time. And that's what we do at Giveffect. And this month, we're so excited to welcome our guest speaker, Joanne Curry, with Creative Fundraising Advisors. So, Joanne, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and thank you for joining. Again, so excited to see so many of you joining for the first time. And also welcome back to those of you who have joined before. My name is Joanne Curry. I am head of client success and principal at Creative Fundraising Advisors. We are a national fundraising consulting firm. We focus on four main areas of nonprofits, arts and culture, human services, the environment, and education. So if you work for one of those, we might be a good partner for you in the future. And we just really work with our clients on fundraising strategies. We do development assessments, but a lot of roads lead to campaigns. And so that's why we're here today talking about capital campaigns.
Wonderful. So welcome again. And for everyone, just to share how this sessions goes, we're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes having a conversation based on the question that you all submitted prior to the session on the registration page. And then the last 10 minutes, we're going to spend on live Q&A. So as we go through the session, if you have any questions for Joanne or myself, please feel free to use the chat and put your question there. Or you can alternatively use the Q&A button on your screen to submit your questions as well. We're gonna make sure we go through all the questions, and also at the end you are going to receive the recording in the next few days of this conversation. We'll also have my colleague Sarah Kaiser in the chat, who is supporting with any questions you might have as we go through the next 30 minutes. All right, well, let's dive right in, Joanne. When we decided to, have a session dedicated to capital campaigns, I immediately thought of you. And before we dive to any details, I think it's important to distinguish what is capital campaign and how is it different from all other campaigns nonprofit might be doing right now.
Yeah, so that's a great question, defining the landscape. So A capital campaign typically is one that is centered around a big vision, something that is transformational, will have huge impact on the community that you serve. That is typically something that is multi-year process planning and then also a multi-year fundraising effort. I do also want to talk about the word capital. I would say historically, capital really refers to bricks and mortar. So think about like building a new building or renovations to a building.
Mm.
These days, we use the term capital campaign more broadly to describe that big visionary fundraising effort. And multiple things can actually go into a capital campaign. It, of course, could still encompass a capital effort, right? So bricks and mortar. But so many organizations are also doing campaigns around building their endowment and capacity or program building as well. So really, it's just the most important thing in defining it is that it has one big vision for a transformational impact that's driving it.
Wonderful. And then when you say a multi-year preparation and a multi-year fundraising, um, how many years are we talking about? Like 5, 10 from your
Yeah.
experience? Like what can can it be?
It can really span the gamut. I would say if you truly go through a planning process, that could take 1 to 2 years. And then a typical capital campaign will run for about 5 years of fundraising. So we've seen them completed in 3, and then we've seen ones that run all the way through 10
Oh,
years,
wow.
which is pretty long. It's a long time to keep your donors engaged and inspired and excited about the project. So we find that 5 years is kind of that sweet spot. Don't get me wrong, it's still a marathon. But the amount of time that it takes to engage your donors, be able to get those commitments, and then start working on the projects and demonstrate the impact that you're already having.
No, that's fine. That's really good to know, just to kind of have a reference.
Yeah,
What
level set
timeline are
on
we
the amount of
looking at?
time it takes.
And then you mentioned that, of course, when you think about capital campaign vision, like having that big and clear vision is so important, right? And to even start thinking about the campaign. Like, do you have any tips, like how the process might look like? How do you define a vision? Any tips there?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to have these conversations with your board and with your staff, right? So if you are, for example, the CEO or executive director of the organization, you, of course, set a lot of the vision, but the board has to be the one that signs off and also sets the vision for the organization. So it's super important that you are aligned on that. And then, of course, you want the staff to be bought in and excited and working towards that, right? Everyone is aligned on the mission of your organization in theory, right? If they're working
Yeah.
there or serving as a board member, but sometimes there's misalignment on where people think that the organization should go in the future. So oftentimes, actually, even before you start thinking of a capital campaign, a strategic plan is a place that a lot of organizations start, right? Because a strategic plan sets the future path for the organization, usually for the next 3 to 5 years. And a lot of times, the outcome of doing a strategic plan is that you have that vision, and now you know that you need some funds to be able to support that vision. So that's often a really good place to start. You don't have to start there, but a strategic plan really will get that alignment with all stakeholders, board, staff alike.
Yeah. So strategic plan can be one of the signs, right, that nonprofit potentially is ready or
Yep.
can consider a capital campaign as a next step. On the
Yeah.
other hand, maybe what are the signs that nonprofit is not ready? Maybe they start thinking about it, but it's like this is some of the signs that maybe it's too early.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is not something to take lightly because, as we just talked about, I mean, it's a minimum of probably about a 7-year commitment. So you really want to make sure that you're ready. So looking at things like the vision and the alignment, of course, with the board. If there's not alignment there, you're not ready for this, right? If you look at your base of supporters and you feel like you have a lot of people that might be entry-level donors, but they need a lot of cultivation to really build a relationship with the organization, that takes time. And so that is something that you should be working on in preparation for a campaign down the road. Another thing is internal infrastructure, right? So if you think about your development department, both the people side of things, but also the organizational, software and things like that, right? Do you have a donor database that you are effectively using? Do you trust the data that's in there? Because data is one really, really important part of determining the potential that you could raise in a campaign scenario. So if you're not confident in the data that you have in your database, that's something to probably work on beforehand. And then on the staffing side, right, this takes a lot of time and time management, a capital campaign. Think about, you still have to continue raising the money that you raise every single year during a campaign. So a campaign is on top of your annual fundraising strategies. So the question is, do you have the staff to support that, right? And it's not that you have to hire a whole second set of staff. It's just taking a look at the positions and the people that you have currently and understanding, are they working as efficiently as they can, right? Some of that ties back to the systems that you have in place for your organization. But are there positions that you might need to create in preparation for a campaign? I'm not really talking about ones that you create for a campaign and then take away after, but thinking about building the infrastructure. If you have, again, a base of donors that needs cultivating, consider hiring another major gifts officer or an annual fund manager that can start to work on cultivating those donors. So that way, by the time you're in a campaign, you're ready to make some asks right away. And then that just builds your base of support. So that way you are a stronger organization after the campaign.
You've hit on so many great points.
I went down a whole rabbit hole there.
No, this is fantastic. And I do have a few follow-up questions because I just want to dive a little bit deeper on some of them.
Yeah.
So one of the first points you mentioned is donor cultivation, right? Which is, again, vision is important, donor cultivation is so important for it. So what does it actually involve when we think about capital in terms of capital campaign?
Yeah. So I think that your biggest supporters in a capital campaign are going to be donors who love your organization, they're bought into the mission, and then you can preview that big vision with them, right? A lot of the times cultivating your donors, especially your biggest supporters, is part of the process in getting ready for a campaign. They can be part of a feasibility study. They can be part of weighing in on that vision. So they are bought in right from the beginning, and they're going to be maybe your earliest gifts. That's kind of the donors at what we call the top of the pyramid, right? Your early big supporters. But then thinking about the base donors of your organization. Again, I know I keep saying vision, but it all goes back to that big vision. If you can then start integrating some of that messaging, you don't have to completely say, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do a campaign, but you can start to talk to your donors in a way that kind of lets them into the idea of the next big vision or thing that you're planning on doing. This can be done through, your maybe like a monthly newsletter, one-on-one for those mid-level to major level donors that are in a portfolio. Start having conversations with them as you're working, with them for an annual gift. Start planting that seed and having that one-on-one connection about the vision and getting their thoughts on it, right? Ask for feedback. That is kind of the most important thing in the beginning, because once you have a campaign, that's set. correct, right? Your vision's probably not changing. So if you can do some work
Right.
on the front end to get buy-in from your donors, and input,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that you have to follow every single thing that they say.
Mm-hmm.
But if they feel like they've contributed to the future of this organization, even just the path of it, they will be more inclined to make sure that this campaign is a success.
No, that's fantastic. Um, Another question I wanted to follow up is in regards to infrastructure and specifically technologies. And you
Yep.
mentioned, right, the importance of the data. Wow, so important. And if the data
As you
is
know.
no good, we know. But have you seen like technology or like the data make or break kind of campaigns? And do you have, aside from the data, is there any other advice to look at the tech infrastructure in preparations for a capital campaign?
Yeah, yes, it can absolutely make or break a successful campaign. I would even say think about it in relation to the annual fundraising campaigns
Mm-hmm.
you do. The way that you are able to run them and pull accurate lists and things like that, that can make or break the success of an annual campaign. So that's the data itself, but also a sophisticated system with, I should say, users who understand how to
Mm-hmm.
use all of the modules, is really, really important. So portfolio management and moves
Mm-hmm.
management, I think, is an incredibly important and necessary tool, that everyone needs in order to
Yeah.
actively manage, a campaign, right? So thinking about
Mm-hmm.
if you are a major gifts officer and you have a portfolio of 100 people, you need to be able to set the strategy for every single one of those people, set action items throughout the year so that way you're balancing the cultivation, solicitation, stewardship for every single one of those people. So
Mm-hmm.
if if you're doing this on an annual basis, fantastic. You're already on the right track, but it gets heightened, right? The stakes are much higher when you're raising millions of dollars for a capital campaign versus what you would raise on an
Mm-hmm.
annual basis. So it's even more important to have that, honestly, that organization and that system that can help keep you on track.
Yeah. Another thing that comes to mind is we recently spoke to one of our clients who are preparing for a capital campaign soon is the database capacity.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
we were talking to them like, oh, we're planning capital campaign. So, original, their database had X number of records and now they had to, increase the capacity
Yeah.
by, I think, almost 20,000 records in preparation
Wow.
for, yeah, I mean, I was sure, let's do it. But it's better to be prepared, right? But that
Absolutely.
definitely comes up a lot with our clients when they consider a capital campaign. Like, do we have enough capacity? Does the platform will support with its Giveffect or any other platform our
Yeah.
initiatives?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, that's really great. I'm curious if you have any, real world examples where successful preparations led to a successful capital campaign, or maybe actually the lack of it. The opposite side, maybe where
Yeah.
preparations were not done fully and it's affected the campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, I have an example of both. I'll start with your second question, right? Where maybe preparation or lack of preparation, has impacted the campaign. So, I talked earlier about getting your donors buy-in, and that's why you do a feasibility study, right? You're literally testing the feasibility of doing this campaign. And one of the most important things that you're testing is, do your donors care about what you are trying to raise money for? Do they like the idea? Because if at the end of the day, and we've done this before where we've tested a campaign and the feedback that we got from donors was, we don't really care about this thing.
Interesting.
This part of the campaign we're really interested in, but this part not so much. So if you don't take the time to do that and to test it with your donors, and you just say, well, everyone should care about this, right? Because
Mhm.
you're doing amazing things and you're not wrong, right? But you're so ingrained in your mission, you
Mhm.
need that outside perspective to understand if the outside support is there, right? So if you skip that step and just say, all right, we're going to start raising $50 million, and you start asking for money and moving forward with all your plans, and people don't say yes, that's a really, really big problem, right? Because then you have to stop in the middle of the campaign and rethink and probably do some of the work that you should have done in preparation for it. So the flip side of it is planning is important. I did have a client that I really, really respect the way that they went about this planning process. So we did a feasibility study. We made some recommendations. Then they took all of those recommendations and went through them one by one and started to implement them, right? To the best of their ability, right? Sometimes you can't do everything, and that's okay. So they took the time, one, to implement. So they took the time to hire some staff. They had to do some work on their database. They took the time for that. Then we started a couple months later, campaign planning, started the planning process, all of that. We got to probably about 6 months in, and they realized that they needed to pause because there was just a couple things going on within the community out of their control that would affect their campaign that they needed to be resolved before they moved forward. So they took about another 9-month
Wow.
pause, which is a
Mhm.
long time.
Mhm.
And once everything was resolved, they came back to the campaign and we picked it up and we launched it.
Wow.
And then right away in the first year of the campaign, they raised half their goal because I feel like
Wow.
they took the time, they
Mhm.
really understood what all the factors that were at
Mhm.
play. And sure, they could have decided, you know what, we need this money. We just need to start acting now. They would not have been as successful as they were had they not waited. So it takes patience and a lot of discipline to do something like that. And I just really respect that they did that because it's paid off literally in the long run. So
Wow, what a fantastic example. And yeah, sometimes you need to invest, right? A lot of infrastructure and doing everything right to get to
yep,
your goal faster.
yep,
Wow,
exactly. Yep.
wonderful. So we are almost on time and we have some questions
Crazy.
coming in. Time just flies when we have this sessions, but one last question before we go to Q&A. And for everyone on the call, please feel free to submit your questions. We still have about 10 minutes to go through them. What is the, John, what is the 4 steps of we talk a lot about
Yep.
preparations, feasibility studies, but if you summarize, right, the campaign, this long 7 years process, what are the 4 main stages of the capital campaign?
Yep. So the first one is that feasibility study that I talked about, right? Is you have the vision, you have an idea for this transformational, impact, and you need to test it. So
Mhm.
that's the first phase. The second then is campaign planning, right? So you've gotten a lot of feedback from your feasibility study. Then that's when you implement some recommendations and then you start making a plan, right, around donors, around your case for
Mhm.
support, around the milestones that you need to hit. So that's campaign planning. Then the next phase is actually launching the campaign. It's typically referred to as the quiet phase of the campaign. We like to talk about it more so as the pace setting and major gifts phase, right? It's really when you're fundraising from your biggest supporters and you still have some flexibility within the campaign. And then the final phase is the public phase, right? So that's when you announce the goal publicly. You've already raised a good chunk of that money and then you're just asking everybody under the tent to help you get over the finish line.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for summarizing it. And for everyone on the call, next week we are going to be meeting same day, Wednesday, same time, and we're going to be diving deep into each phase of the capital campaign. But let's switch the gears and let's see what questions came so far. And for everyone, please feel free to keep adding the questions. So the first question is from Michael. Let's go one more time, Joanne. What is the difference between annual fund campaign and a capital campaign, if you can summarize it?
Yep. So an annual fund campaign, that really is something that fulfills your operating goals year over year. So usually an annual campaign literally just runs
Mm.
1 year at a time. A capital campaign, that is the overall big vision. You are probably fundraising towards that goal for about 3 to 5 years. And typically it funds initiatives, programs, possibly a building, things like that, that are above and beyond your annual fundraising needs.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another question is, um, was the advice to include the cost of an extra fundraisers in the
Mm.
capital campaign, or is it part of the pre-campaign planning? Mm.
Yeah, it could be both. And I understand that budgets could be tight, so it might be hard to add somebody in pre-campaign planning when you're not even sure what the campaign will look like. If you have the ability and you look at your donor base and you say, wow, there's a lot of potential for people who are maybe giving $1,000 and who could be giving 5,000, 10,000, and we just don't have enough fundraisers to manage them yet. That's cause for saying, do we have the budget to try to hire someone now? But I would say that typically in during the capital campaign and maybe right before you launch it, typically out of a feasibility study, we end up recommending that you need to hire at least another fundraiser. You can actually build the cost of that fundraiser's salary into the campaign, right? So like there's usually a capacity building portion of a capital campaign. There's expenses that you just need to cover, and that you need to roll up into the overall goal of your campaign. And that can include new stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you, Michael, for a great question. Next question is, can you talk about pledges versus a direct ask, especially if you don't have a brick and mortar identified and are still in the search process?
Yeah. So I think two things around this. One is um, let's say this is like if you don't have a brick and mortar identified, but you are looking at building something, architectural renderings are your best friends. But also focusing on what you will be able to do as a result of having this new building or this new program or this endowment. So if you focus on the impact and the outcome of all of that, that is what will drive you to be able to ask for a multi-year pledge, right? Because it's not about giving money this year for this thing. It's about making a pledge to get the organization kind of to the next level. And oftentimes, multi-year pledges are a vehicle that allows our donors to be able to give a larger gift than they would be able to upfront, right? Also, that being said, there is a strategy for a direct one-time ask.
Hi, everyone. Is it me frozen or Joanne? Can everyone hear my voice? Just wanted to double check.
I'm so sorry. I think my internet went down.
Hi. Oh, I was like, did my internet go down? You were frozen, but now you're back. Thank you so
Oh
much. You're
goodness,
fine.
I'm
It
so
was your,
sorry.
no worries. It's all technology. We're back and we're here. All right. Let's see. We're almost in time, but let's go to the next question. How can we go about making sure our data is healthy and we have the right system in place? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah. So I would say start with doing specifically for the data, doing a data audit, right? And that's a service that we offer. Many organizations offer it as well, but you can start internally. Basically, that's saying, on the most basic level, do we have contact information for all of our constituents, right? It's one thing to have a lot of names in the database, but if you don't have an accurate email, phone number, or address for people, then that record is effectively useless, right? So how many emails do we have? How many addresses? How many phone numbers? Things like that. Duplicates, right? Does
Mhm.
your
Big one.
organization have a database have a duplicate problem where people enter their address slightly differently when they're registering for an event, and all of a sudden you have 5 Joanne Currys and you don't know who's the right one. There's ways to keep on top of that cleanup. So I would say start there. And then if you want an outside perspective, you can, look for a firm that can do one for you that not only audits that type of data, but then also the infrastructure in place. Do you have a process for how you format addresses and enter those things, right? Do you have multiple people entering data into your database, or is there like one source of data entry? So these are a lot of questions that I think that you can start by internally asking these yourselves and looking at that yourselves. But then if you feel like you need an outside set of eyes, I would honestly recommend looking for a firm that does that as we
Fantastic.
do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jan. Thanks so much, everyone. We're right on time.
Okay, sorry about the internet.
We're all remote work, Zoom. It's all good. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about capital campaigns or other things?
Sure. Yeah. So you can visit our website, which is creativefundraisingadvisors.com, or email me directly, Joanne at creativefundraisingadvisors.com.
And the information will be in the chat if you want to grab it in the second. But otherwise, next week we are connecting here again at noon Eastern for our second portion of Capital Campaign. And we're going to talk more about 4 stages and go deeper on each of them. Thanks so much, Joanne, again for bringing your expertise. Thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on this speed learning session with us today, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thank you all. It was great to be here.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good
Bye.
one.